right, welcome back, Groves. We're in week 8 of our series in the book of Ecclesiastes. I hope you guys are all doing well. I'm here wearing my National Park t-shirt in honor of Bailey, and I hear the Monday Night Grove. You guys kind of have a little ongoing joke about which park I'm going to represent. So I don't know if you can tell which one I'm representing. If you can see that well, then good for you. You have good eyesight. But this is for you, Bailey. But anyways, this week we're going to be talking about an issue that is kind of maybe a tough one. I think that a lot of people have issues. They talk about, the God of the New Testament being different than the God of the Old Testament, and kind of trying to struggle with this balance of, kind of this vengeance and kind of the seriousness of God in the Old Testament, and then Jesus, it's like all about love. And so they kind of get squirrely, I think, about how you balance that. And so we're going to be diving into that a little bit today, as we look at Ecclesiastes and some of the things that Solomon says to us and all of his wisdom about how we should kind of approach God and kind of our view of God. But I want to start off in the New Testament as we kind of get the gears rolling here for you, because this is probably a passage that you've read several times. 1 John 4:18, where he says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love." And so it's saying in perfect love, you don't need to fear. And so it's kind of an interesting thought, because again, New Testament, we think, okay, because God loves us, we have no reason to fear in that sense. But then you go back to Ecclesiastes, and you're going to read this passage at the very end of Ecclesiastes, literally the last kind of thing he tells us. Here's the conclusion of the matter in chapter 12, verse 13. "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil." And so you kind of get that, and you're like, well, how do I reconcile those two things? And then you even start off, Solomon wrote Proverbs, and the very beginning of Proverbs, if you don't know, it kind of makes this statement right out of the gates. In verse 7, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." Like, if you don't fear God, if you don't have a fear of Yahweh, then that's like, you can't even begin to comprehend anything, because that's where it all begins. And it says, but fools despise wisdom, and fools despise instruction. And so it's kind of this idea of, well, what do we do with that? And in your groves tonight, hopefully you guys already discussed some of your fears. Like, what's one of the most scared you've ever been this past year, or what's one of your greatest fears? And it's this question of, okay, perfect love drives out fear, and yet constantly in the Old Testament, constantly in Solomon's writings, we're told the fear of the Lord and to fear God. And it's kind of like, well, which is it? Even in the Old Testament, you see some of these main characters. You see Joshua as he's about to go into land, and God's telling him, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid." Or you have Gideon, and God appears to him and says, "Hey, don't be afraid. Don't fear." And so how do you reconcile love of God and fear? What do you do with all that? And so I just kind of want to poke you a little bit and kind of make you think a little bit about it, because I think there's this idea that whatever is your greatest fear is what kind of controls you. I remember one time we were in the Bay Area at the church where, a lot of you guys met Dale at Rising Weekend, and kind of our janitor for the church, or the guy who kind of maintained all facilities, he literally lived across the street from the church, like just right across the street, and he actually was retired from, I think it was Delta or American or United, I don't know which one. But he was retired from one of the main airlines, and so one of his benefits that he had like his entire life was he could literally fly anywhere in the world for free. Back in the day when they used to do that, I don't know if they still do it or not. Maybe Connor Friedman kind of knows something about that. But he kind of would fly all over, and so he could fly all over. But his wife, she was afraid of open spaces. She had agoraphobia, and so he could literally go anywhere in the world, but his wife would barely leave the house. Like, she would leave to go to church, and then she would go back, and that was like it. And so that fear controlled her. If you kind of think about, a lot of us, we have these fears, and they control us. If we're afraid of heights, that controls us. If we're afraid of the dark, that can control us. And so this idea of fear is this control thing. And so I kind of wonder, in that sense, if you have a greater fear, then it kind of overcomes the lesser fear. And so if you have a fear of Yahweh, a fear of God, then maybe that, can help you overcome your fear of an enemy, in Gideon's case or in Joshua's case, because you fear God more than you fear the enemy, and therefore it kind of has the pecking order. And therefore it's kind of a good thing in that sense to fear God, because that means he's the thing that you listen to most, because you Fear him. And I don't know what you think of when you think or you associate with the word fear, but that's another question for you to kind of unpack in your grow. And so really, I don't necessarily I have my answers. I don't want to just give it to you because I want you guys to wrestle with this out amongst your grove. But again, how do you reconcile perfect love drives out fear, where the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, it's the beginning of knowledge, it's kind of the ground base for where you should build your life. And so what do you do with that? And so hopefully this will just give you some thoughts to get going, because I do believe that the God of the New Testament and the God of the Old Testament is the same God, okay, just FYI. It's not like he's schizophrenic, although if you read it, you may think that, but when you kind of understand what it means to fear God and what it means to love God, and you kind of merge those things together, then you can kind of make sense of it. So hopefully that's where you're going to end up today. Maybe it'll take a little while to get there, I don't know, but hopefully in your discussions you'll be able to unpack that and help each other, sharpen each other when it comes to this idea. So we only got one more week after this, so stay strong and keep going, and we will see you next week.